Hello, Lou Simon. It's been a few years
I
since
know.
we've
I was
talked.
just I was just thinking about that. I was like, we have like communicated through messaging and commenting
Mhm.
on each other's stuff, but like sort of face to face hasn't been since Wisconsin.
Yeah, since your first film, The Awakening, The Awakened showed at the Madison Horror Film Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a while. So how are you doing?
I can't complain, man. I mean, I know a lot of people going through a rough time, and I'm comparatively doing very well. So like I can't I should feel a little guilty about that sometimes.
Not at all, not at all. It's good to hear someone's doing okay. So
I mean, yeah, like I don't know. Some people are these are really rough times, but I have survived incredibly well. I sorry, like I just moved, so like my setup is not as professional
oh,
as it usually is.
no, no,
Maybe I can put a different background or something if it's
no, no,
probably better. You
no
okay with that?
worries. Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's fine. It's all good. So, well, I appreciate you taking time out. I know that you've been working on a number of projects lately, and Agoraphobia is now out in the U.S. And now I've hit all your films. I've watched all your films now that have
Yay!
been
Thank
released
you. Yay!
because Agoraphobia. It seems like there's a bit of a history there, and we'll get to it in a little bit of how why it wasn't around because I looked for it for a long time
Mhm.
because I saw I haven't seen that work of Lou's yet and where is it and in the US. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but first I want to talk a bit about the film. If you would mind telling my listeners a bit about what agoraphobia is about.
Okay, so it's a story of a young woman who has agoraphobia. She suffers from the fear of open spaces, which so a lot of agoraphobics stay inside. And because of that, she has lived a very sheltered life. And when her father passes away, she inherits a very nice home in the Florida Keys, and it seems like a perfect place where she can actually um, do her therapy and all that stuff to overcome her fear, her phobia. And so she moves there with her husband, and everything's great until she starts experiencing some kind of like crazy, supernatural things. And at points, she was not sure whether what she saw is real, whether she imagined something. And because of her disease, a lot of it gets explained away,
Mhm.
by her friends and her husband and so on. So, um, but there is something supernatural going on, and it's it's how she comes about finally overcoming her phobia to be able to battle this supernatural forces, if you
Yeah,
will, sort
eh,
of, without saying too much.
with as some would say, a bit of a twist to some of the things. So yeah, I haven't posted my review yet, but I can say I dug it quite a bit.
Cool, thanks.
Um, you know, and I like the idea. It kind of seemed to fit in well with your first film, The Awakened. That we have a home. There's supernatural things going on. There's a lot of supernatural things going on in it seems like in Florida. Uh,
Yep.
Uh, so where did the idea come from, and for you to pick agoraphobia as the main character's condition?
It actually, I was trying to make another film after Hazmat, and
Mhm.
I wanted to move up in budget and in production value, and so I really wanted to work with name actors. And the idea was that I was going to continue from that point on, moving into higher budgets and that kind of thing. And so I was looking for a story where I could use. I knew what what kind of budget we would have and how much we could raise. So I wanted to spend that amount on talent rather than on production.
Mhm.
So I decided I was looking for something that could be set in one location, and so I had, which at this point I think I've become the master of one location films.
Nothing wrong with that, though. I did notice a theme with all of
did,
them.
did you
From
notice that?
I did notice a theme of from the Awakened to here to even All Girls Weekend to Hazmat to 3 at all kind of centralized in one location. I like that though, and I completely understand with the whole independent production. It does, you don't have to. You can use your budget in other ways then without having to move everybody to many locations. So,
Exactly.
you
I
know,
mean, if you haven't made films, you probably don't understand just how costly that is to change locations. But it's a budget killer.
mhm,
So I was looking for another one location
mhm,
shoot, which this actually had one, two, three locations,
mm,
um, because there's a bit that happens in the woods, and that was shot in another location. And
mhm,
then there's the apartment
right.
at the end, so that was another location there. But we I was looking for another idea, so I was actually on vacation in the Florida Keys when the I was driving back and I saw these beautiful, I mean, there's gorgeous mansions
Mhm.
there. And I was like, wow, these lucky MFers who get to live with this kind of view every day. And I just had this random thought of like, oh God, can you imagine if you live there, but you're an old person and can actually enjoy it or anything? Because a
Mhm.
lot of those are retired people, right? And they tend to be
Right.
older. And I thought, oh, that would suck. And I was like, maybe there's a story there somewhere. And I thought, well, what other reason would a person not be able to go outside and enjoy this? And I thought, hmm, how about agoraphobia? And then it just seemed like it was just that more
Mhm.
dramatic in the sense of like you really can't go anywhere and you're stuck inside with this ghost. So it and then after that my brain just takes off and does all kinds of weird things.
Now, did you do a lot of studying on agoraphobia before you did the film or did the screenwriting?
I did. I did a lot of research on it, and then I mostly, after I got the basics of how it works, and and how people develop it in the first place.
Mhm.
Um, I started going on like blogs and stuff like that, and reading the users' comments and stuff
Mhm.
like that to see what their experiences with it was. And had read that exposure therapy is like a big
Mhm.
thing that they use for that, and I actually did exposure therapy myself
Mm.
many years ago. For I had a really bad fear of flying after
Mhm.
9/11, and I stopped flying for a good 3-4 years. And so I had to go through exposure therapy, and it was virtual reality. They give you the goggles and the headphones,
Sure.
and they sit you in a chair, and you're like all taped up so they can measure your heartbeat and your breathing and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so having experienced that myself, and that's how I was able to fly again, and now I
Sure.
fly everywhere. So I really got it. I got it how
Mhm.
it works. So
Yeah, it seemed like you did there was a lot of authenticity to the exposure therapy part of it, which
mhm.
kind of leads me to the cast. You mentioned how you wanted to get more of the cast, and you have some of the folks that you've worked with before, but you also have in here Tony Todd, Maria Olson, Roberto Escobar. Did you have some of these individuals in mind when you were writing the film, or did those cast puzzle pieces kind of fall into place after?
The felt afterwards, I knew that I wanted somebody that was a horror icon of some
Mhm.
kind to be a good meaty role in the film.
Mhm.
Like, so I wanted to write a supporting role that was something that would appeal to them, one, and two, that was more than just like a 5 minute like a 2 minute
Right.
cameo.
Sure.
Because you see that all the time in horror, that they'll come on and be like, well, it was nice meeting you, and all of a sudden they're on the poster and like and starring blah blah blah, and you're like, really? If I blinked, I missed them. I hate that. So I
Right.
didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be like a real role.
Mhm.
um and can you hear all that noise?
A little bit.
Oh,
It's
sorry
okay.
about that. I don't even know what's going on, but
It's okay.
and
Uh-huh.
neighbors.
Mm.
And then um, because of that, I specifically wrote a role that first would appeal to somebody like that,
Mhm.
that, oh, it's always playing the bad guy. And two, that that it's a reason to watch a film.
Right.
And you always have to
Mhm.
be thinking about what's going to sell after you make the film. So
Yeah, and it was great that you got Tony Todd. I
yeah.
love Tony's work, and I love him in pretty much every role I've seen him in. So to see him in here, and the fact that you didn't have him, as some people would call it, stunt casting, to where he just briefly, hello, it's Tony Todd, and leaves. I liked that. I liked that he played the doctor role, which is kind of integral to the Faye character, who has this condition of that agoraphobia. So I like that he did have a meteor role, but the cast really seemed to work well. And did you bring some cast members back you had worked before because you enjoyed their work or whatever? Because I saw you had a couple of people in here who were in your previous film and then your future films as well.
Yeah, I ended up I recycled them a lot. Yeah, no, I mean, first you're dealing with, South Florida, where, um, to be completely honest, like if you're not living in LA or New York,
Right.
you tend to get the people who haven't made it big yet, so they
Right.
haven't left for those places,
Hmm.
um, so you're not you're like, when you find somebody you really like to work
Hmm.
with and who's talented, you're like grab onto them, like, oh my god, you have to be in all my films now. um, and That's number one. And I mean, we were spending a lot of money on
Hmm.
having Tony Todd and bringing him over. Production was longer than my usual, in terms of
Right.
days. And so and Cassie Skirble, who had been in Sharknado at that point. So,
Hmm.
there were a lot of other costs. So you want to get the best talent that you have
Hmm.
around you. And um, yeah, I didn't write with them in mind, but once it was written, I definitely was like, well, I know who would play this role well,
Sure.
and that kind of thing. So
Sure. And I think it worked really well on screen, and your locations you mentioned, there's not a lot of locations, but you do have a few. Did it take a while to find the right house and apartment? Because that apartment, wow, holy,
yeah.
that was a gorgeous apartment. But the house too was almost a character as well with the way it was designed. How long did it take to find the location, and did you have a specific house in mind, or was it what you could possibly get? Uh,
I mean, I definitely wanted to be a very nice home.
mhm.
And that was really hard to get, just because a lot, people who have that kind of money don't
Yeah,
usually want
right.
to be like, yeah, go ahead and use my home, even
Sure.
though there's so many empty, like, gorgeous mansions in Miami that people only come in for, like,
Yeah.
for 2 months a year, and you're like, you're so rich, it's just so not fair. uh, but it was a little difficult to get.
Mhm,
We did I did eventually just approach somebody I knew,
mhm,
that was sort of a business relationship,
mhm.
and I said, okay, this is what we can do, and we'd be really good to it, and so on. And he agreed. It's not on the water. That part
Right.
was creative,
Mhm.
editing. And there were like tons of issues that came up with that because he actually stayed in the house while we were filming.
Oh,
Not while we were
sure.
filming, but like at night. So we had
Right.
to take really good care of it and like clean up every day after we finished cleaning. So that was a bit of a hassle because you have already long enough days to add another hour of cleaning after that. Was kind of
Well, especially for this one. This one felt a little bit one of your gorier films. And I like that. It surprised me a little bit, I will say, but it especially with the way the film opens. But I thought it worked well. Was there a call of just how much of that to use and show versus not? Because I could see where easily with the situations where you could possibly go a little overboard, but you don't in this. Did you weigh that of how much to use and not use? And
um I mean, I wanted that scene to be very shocking to grab
right,
the audience from the get-go,
sure,
and from an indie filmmaking perspective, I mean, I'm very much about not just about making films, but about distributing films. I mean, like
right,
I'm like I could teach courses on the thing. I talk about it so much, but I mean, when you're trying to sell the film afterwards, the distributor's going to look at the first 10 minutes of it,
hmm,
and if it doesn't grab them, forget it. You could have the best movie in the world, nobody will know.
sure,
So I definitely wanted something that would grab their attention from the get-go.
hmm,
And so I purposely wanted that one to be extremely bloody and and shocking. So um I don't know. To me, like, that's one of the fun things about horror. Like, it has,
hmm,
there are different subgenres,
hmm,
but if you like horror overall, like, you're gonna like everything. And I
right,
hope to give everybody a little bit, like, same thing with Hazmat. Yes, it's
hmm,
it's it's a slasher, but there's also like a supernatural element to
hmm,
it, as to why it's happening in the first place. So, like, I like to mix genres a little bit. Three, same thing. There's a little bit of torture porn in there with a little bit of, a little bit of psychological
yeah.
horror. So
Yeah, and you do seem to have a theme of supernatural. Do you like supernatural horror? Is that kind of one of your stronger genres that you enjoy more? And what kind of influenced you in your writing? Would you say supernatural films?
I don't know if I necessarily say. I mean, guess on All Girls Weekend. Oh shit! Now I'm like completely self-analyzing. Oh my god, you're right.
It wasn't meant as a bad thing. It's just I've noticed there are
There is a trend,
supernatural.
isn't there?
There's a little bit of supernatural elements in a number of your projects. So I was just wondering if that was, you know.
That's true. I had never thought about that. I mean, I like anything where you're questioning what you know and what you
Mhm,
believe. And that's part of also why there's a lot of stuff about mental illnesses or
mhm.
different kinds in my film, because the way the mind works is fascinating.
Right.
So it's anything that makes you question reality, anything that makes you question what you know and what you believe.
Mhm.
I just love those things over and over again.
Bend the reality a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what I liked with the setup too with your film Agoraphobia is here we have someone who has a condition who doesn't want to go outside, who's trapped in a house with some entity or whatever, some force, and she's scared. So what are you going to do? You can't stay, you can't leave, and I liked that fight psychologically. I think that worked really well with the Faye character. Um and the way you shot it too. Now, how long did this film take to shoot?
This one was 15 days, which is it's probably at least 3 days longer than than the usual. But those 3 days make a huge difference in budget. Like, people don't
Sure.
understand. Yeah.
Well, but at the same time, that's still quite quick too for a
Mm,
full feature film that you
yeah.
have in here, especially with all the elements and the characters that you introduce in here as well. And so, yeah, it was very impressive. And so I have to ask, and if you can't talk about it, that's fine. I understand. But why did it take so long for this film? Because this was your third film, but it's just coming out now. Why did it take so long to come to the States? Because like I said, I was looking for it when I saw it in your list. I'm like, did I just miss it? And I would go through and I'm like, I can't find it anywhere. Uh,
Well, I mean, it was available everywhere but the United
well,
States.
yeah, right.
Like
Yeah,
it
anywhere.
literally got picked up everywhere but the US. Yeah, it was or rather North America. I'm sorry, Canada.
Right. No,
Sorry, we keep forgetting you're up there. You're
they're too nice, so I could.
unlike these neighbors, they're nice and quiet upstairs neighbors. Um, yeah, no, it was doing great. I was super excited about it, and then it, it's such a long story, but the gist of it is that it got distributed without our permission,
Mm,
and the initial I don't believe it was under malicious.
right.
It was just like just a set of circumstances that led for it to be distributed, and by the time that the mistake was realized, it was too late. It had already been
Mm,
um, pirated and put in all the torrent sites. So at that point, we thought, okay, well, let's try to see if we can work this out and try to get it released properly.
right.
And then it got released again
Oh.
and again. 3 times it got released, and by the same people. So we eventually filed a lawsuit in federal court in New York. Still trying to work it out with them. Still trying
Mm,
to see if there was a way to get them to release it properly. It was a pretty nice size. It's pretty known
mhm.
distributor. So at that point, it was like, well, might as well milk this for something.
Right.
Um, but we also sued, get this, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. This three little
Little companies, just
companies
little
you might have heard
companies.
of. You never heard
Sure.
of these three, but
No, no. Startups, I think. I think they're startups.
yeah, like yeah, I'm sure in somebody's garage or something. So yeah, we were gonna go big or go home, and
Mhm.
so but federal court, and it just took forever.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually settle until we went to mediation in 2019. So it was 4 years of fighting this. I was exhausted,
I can imagine. Yeah.
stressed out. And meanwhile, we had just, we had investors saying, what's going on? We had
Right.
cast and crew asking, wait, what's going on? Because I see that it's playing in, Russia, but
Yeah.
I can't see it in my own backyard. It was crazy. It was just insane. And so finally, November 2015 was when everything was settled, everything was signed,
Mhm.
everything was done, um, and then it was like, okay, what do we do with it now? Like, what distributor is going to pick it up at this point?
Right.
And so a lot of debating back and forth, and finally, February 12th, 2021, it finally got released. Yay!
Which is great. Congratulations for that.
Thanks.
It's good to see the indie filmmaker win once in a while, even though you've got to go through a lot of hoops. And that pirating, I don't think people realize sometimes the torrenting, how that can damage an independent film, especially. I mean, you hear it, you're like the big budget films. Yeah, it's not nice when anybody has it, but especially for films, with working on a limited budget or production or whatnot, and you're just trying to get it distributed.
And the
That
crazy thing for me when I hear, like, I almost understood in this movie because I had Tony Todd. So if you were to,
sure.
like, Google Tony Todd, I can see. But all my films have gotten pirated, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't understand. Like a lot of them don't have any recognizable names.
Mhm.
So why would you actually go through that much? And you'll see them and they're dubbed and they have subtitles. I'm like, you spend more time trying to, how many people are going to see this on a torrent site and risk getting a virus
Right.
to watch this movie? Really? I don't get it. I really honestly don't get why they do it. But obviously it must work out. Otherwise, why would they do it? And they're giving it away for free. So I honestly, I don't get what they get out of it.
I I've not figured that out myself. But
Because if you were charging, you could almost understand why, but otherwise,
sure.
why? Other than just be a complete a-hole. I
It
don't.
it could be. I've never understood the actual motivation behind it, so I couldn't say for sure. But at least now you have a proper release with this film, and now all of your films now are in the US. You had three, which I enjoyed. I've enjoyed them all, and
Oh, thank
uh,
you.
uh, you're welcome. Because yeah, you can definitely tell it has your style and your voice, and you definitely are putting in leads in females in strong female roles. Is that kind of a goal as well, to try to get more of that out there? Because I know the whole the topic of gender representation, or just representation in general, especially in indie cinema, has always been up for a topic of discussion. So I've noticed with your films, you do have strong female characters in every film. Is that kind of a goal of yours, to have those types of films out and get more of those types of films out?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if so much of is something I really put into that much thought, to be completely
Mhm.
honest. I am a very strong woman. So
Sure.
if I'm writing a character, it kind of that's how she's gonna come across because
Mhm.
I'm pretty
Writing from experience,
pretty
right?
pretty ballsy,
Yeah.
like, people joke around with me all the time, like, you have the biggest balls of anybody I know. So, it's really I kinda,
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I wear them with pride. But, I mean, I don't set out to
Mhm.
I set out to write characters that I can relate to and
Sure.
that, sound believable to me, and the
Mhm.
majority of women I know are that. So,
Right.
I think just forever we've been watching movies where every woman is, not that, and so
Yeah.
you maybe other people think that that's how women are, but the majority of women I know have no choice but to be tough because this
Right.
life is tough, and we're fighting a thousand battles, even stuff that most people don't understand that
Mhm.
we have to fight all our lives. So I just write realistic female characters, and by virtue of that, they come out as strong.
Well, I think it's fitting for the stories that you have, and they really do come across that way, and it's great to see that. Now you have some films, I know, in the works currently. You want to tell us a little bit about what you got coming up, as far as projects in the works? Because I know COVID kind of put a lot of things on pause, especially for indie filmmakers. So. Uh,
That's for another filmmaker. I actually, I actually was like, this is a great time to make a film. So I actually did write a film last year and
mhm.
wrote it. And within, I want to say like 2 weeks, we were filming it.
Wow.
And I wrote it specifically to be made during COVID, but not about COVID. I
Sure.
figured when this whole thing was over, the last thing we would want to talk about is COVID, so, or watch movies about COVID or anything like that. So I wanted to stay away from that.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to talk about or think about COVID now. So why would I want to do it
Right.
like a year from now? So, but I still wanted it to be done, one, safely, and
Right.
two, that we could do with the limited resources that we
Mhm.
had. So, because I like limited locations, my friend, I actually wrote an entire film that takes place in a car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
talk about limited.
No, not at all. It's there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're stories definitely fit the location, and they don't feel a need to have to go elsewhere because you write them in a great way to where they can, being self-contained in an area like that. And you're in a car now, and so
Yes,
I
I just thought let me just amp that up a little bit. And that's always the trick, right? When you have
right.
minimum locations, like how do you keep it interesting? How do you keep
Hmm.
it? How do you make the people when I go? Have I just been in a car for 80 minutes? What the hell? So hopefully, the story fits. Well,
Hmm.
it's about an attorney who. This is a thriller. It's not really horror at all,
Hmm.
but it is about an attorney, a female attorney that gets in her car to go home after having an affair with her coworker
Mm.
who is married. And as she's going home, she gets a call from somebody saying that she has to deliver one of her files for one of her cases at a destination 73 minutes away. And so the entire film, she's driving to this destination and she's trying to figure out what it is about this file that they want. And so
Oh, that,
everything happens through video calls or phone calls. So we had actors everywhere. We had actors in Georgia, Tennessee,
mhm,
Texas, Florida, and the only, I mean, we had some of them were video calls, so
mhm.
they did record
Sure.
themselves, but like the main
Mhm.
footage that you see is her driving in this car.
And that's intriguing. You've got me. I find that intriguing because,
Yay!
well, with agoraphobia and even your other film, you don't realize, or it doesn't feel like, oh, we're just in the same location because of the way it's shot or edited, and edited, I should say. So I think it's very fitting, and you do make the most of the locations that you have there, with different angles and such as well. Do you do a lot of pre-production as far as what type of shots and stuff that you're going to do?
Oh
Uh, I
yeah.
so is there a lot of pre-production considering you're working on a limited budget and time frame?
Yeah, I mean, shot list is incredibly important,
Mm,
and especially because if you're using a real location rather than a studio, so you don't have, it's not like you can just move walls. You really, really have to think about every shot that you plan and what's going to look like. I have started work. I started from the beginning. I sat in on the editing,
mhm,
and I think I probably learned more about directing from editing the films or sitting in on the editing
mhm,
afterwards than I did from actually being on set, because that's where you really get, okay, why even bother getting that shot that's never going to make
mhm.
it? Or so as I'm filming, I'm actually editing in my head of like,
Oh,
okay,
nice. Mhm,
what shot do I absolutely need to do this? Like, why get a take that, for the whole scene from a white, well, I'm never gonna use that. I'm gonna
mhm.
use the beginning and maybe the end, but other than that, it's
Right.
always gonna go in, for a close up. So why even bother? So stuff like that, like it's a learning process, and I mean, I hope to continue to get. I mean, I never directed
Mhm.
anything before I directed. So so it's been a learning process for
Sure.
me for sure. And I hope to get more projects to learn from, learn something every time.
Well, I learned something new from your films every time I so
Uh,
and look forward to your next project where it's in within the car. That sounds like an interesting thriller. So where do you go from here then with that? You have that project that you're working on now. Is there something lined up even after that? Have you been planning taking time during COVID to kind of plan out?
Always. Instead of always be selling, it's always be developing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'm working, and we're very close to getting a sci-fi
Ooh.
film done. It's a post-apocalyptic story called Adam Six, and it's about a man who wakes up from a coma and finds out that he's the last surviving man in an all-female colony.
Well, that again, you've got me hooked. I'm very interested to see how that plays out. uh, so when you're writing your films and that, do you pull from films or find influences in films you've watched in the past? And if so, is there any specific film that like stands out that you're like, I love what they did there, and you go back to?
Yeah, yeah, always. But
Hmm.
I can't say it's just one. It's
Hmm.
different ones depending on the
Sure.
film, you know. Like for example, All Girls Weekend, I really love the movie, I think it's called The Edge,
Hmm.
you know, with Alec Baldwin
Hmm.
and yeah, love that movie. I love the outdoors, so I always love this idea of, you know, man versus nature kind of thing. And of course I turn into a woman versus nature.
Yeah.
Um and all of them have a little something the other. Agoraphobia has a lot of stuff from different ones. You know, it has
Hmm.
some things from An Nightmare on Elm Street. It has some stuff from um, old, you know, old
Hmm.
Hitchcock movies. Um, the Twist
Yeah.
kind of parodies a kind of famous movie that people will see and maybe remember, but I can't say it without saying the twist, because it's actually the name of the movie.
Yeah, we won't.
So, um, so yeah, like always, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
there's nothing that hasn't been done at this point. There's so many
Right.
movies out there, so nothing's gonna be complete. I mean, some things maybe like Memento. I
Mm.
thought that was the most original thing I've ever seen, but unless you're Christopher Nolan, you're always borrowing from other stuff and adapting it somehow.
See, and I think that can sometimes get a bad rep because you're right. There's so much out there now. It's eventually going to come around to where you might see, oh, well, that's this. And for me, as long as it feels original, like you're like giving your own spin, if you're using that for influence, of course, that's how we live through experiences and learn, and that impacts us, every day. So I can see where that where that comes in. But as long as you're putting your own brand on, which you have with your films, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, even though some people may disagree and say, oh, they're trying to rip off whatever. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
And there are some movies that are so much like the original that you're
That's
like,
true.
oh come on, really, come
Mhm.
on, just put a little bit of effort. But I mean, there is very little, especially in horror.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so much of it out there. How can you do something completely original? You know,
Right.
um, it's always going to have something. Plus, I mean, we're
Mhm.
human beings. We're influenced by stuff that we've seen and
Mhm.
read and what have you, and we can't, you know, we can't write or create in a vacuum. Unless
Yeah.
you're Christopher Nolan, you know,
Unless you're
he's
Christopher Nolan, in which
seriously, that
case
guy has an imagination. God bless him.
which he's in some, sensory deprivation tank that he doesn't look at anything and he comes out
He
with a
probably
script.
does some kind of hallucinogenics or something like that. Seriously, Insidious. Like, who the hell comes up with that idea? A dream within a dream within a dream. You're like, whoa.
Okay. Wait, am I in a dream now watching a Christopher Nolan film? What? So, would you have any advice for any up and coming indie filmmakers, especially female filmmakers who want to get into the business? Would you have some advice of how to start out?
Don't do it. No.
Mhm. you know
I
how
would
many
be.
you know how many independent filmmakers tell me, "Don't do it. If you want to do
Don't
anything
do
else,
it.
you should do it." But
Don't do it. It is being in an abusive relationship. It really is. And you know you should leave him, but you can't, because it's also very, very addictive.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I would, you know, my big thing, which is something I've always lived by, and one of the things I see a lot in indie films that make it, mm, just lower the quality of the production. And yeah, I'm a big believer in just, you know, single locations or
Mhm.
few locations, few characters. Spend time on the story,
Mhm.
and developing good characters, and you don't need a lot of other stuff, you know. Um, So I mean, that's what I've tried to do, and it's, it's worked so far. And you know, I hate to say it, but try to do some commercial.
Mhm.
You can do the wildly creative, super personal passion project after your name, and then everybody will think you're brilliant. But you need to you need to make something commercial to be able to make another one. You
Mhm.
know.
Well, that's a great advice, and I appreciate you very
What I
much. It's
know.
it- it's a pleasure talking to you again. Is there a place where folks can keep up with what you're working on and follow up with you?
Well, I'm Ms. MS Lou Simon everywhere, so it's on all platforms. And then Agoraphobia is now on Amazon to rent and purchase, and it's going to be out. It's on the Binge Horror channel
Mhm.
on Roku TV, and it's going to be out on Tubi TV within the next couple weeks, depending
Plus,
on when they're watching this.
and plus, your other films are out there: Three, All Girls Weekend, Hazmat, The Awakened, all of them out there, and people should check them out for sure. Each one is different, and that's what I like to see. Now I'm really excited about the sci-fi one because I want to see what you're able to do with science fiction. So
Mm.
we look forward to seeing those projects. And yeah, thank you very much for your time, Lou,
Thank you for
tonight.
having me. It was so nice talking to you again after all these
You
years.
you bet. It's great to at least vocally instead of just through text. So
Right. Yeah. Or
and
like commenting on each other's posts and stuff.
right. And when your next film comes out, I'll be happy to have you back and talk about that one. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
fantastic. Well, we will talk to you later, Lou, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You bet. Have a good
Bye.
night.